Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for that really lovely welcome. And I'm just so delighted to be in the Isle of Man for the first time. I'm very excited to be here. It's such a privilege to be here. And I'm so looking forward to all the presentations after my talk when I get to sit down and relax. So I was asked to come along and give a kind of in-depth technical lecture for about an hour about the... No, I'm just joking. So... my talk's called AI Demystified, Navigating the New Digital Frontier. And I guess the whole idea really with my talk is to tell you a bit about myself and my kind of life and career and how I've got to where I am today. Talk a bit about some of the things that I've done, including running the campaign to save Bletchley Park, and then kind of move into AI as it was when I started my degree back in 1989 and kind of all the way through to where we are today, with a couple of technical details, but not very much, really. So I don't know if you can guess who that is. So I didn't always look like some crazy middle-aged, or even maybe a bit older than middle-aged now, red-headed woman, and I actually looked quite normal once. Someone asked me, when did I first know that I was a geek? And I guess as a professor of computer science, I must be a geek. So I know that now. And I thought back to this kind of time, and when I was probably about 7 or 8 here, I think, I used to save up my pocket money every week, and then about once a month we go to the local shopping centre, and I'd run straight into W.H. Smith and straight over to the maths textbook section so that I could buy myself a maths textbook, because for me that was the most exciting thing that I could think of to spend my money on. So I guess I was pretty geeky from an early age, even though I didn't really know it. Anyone else do that, actually? Yes, one, finally. We have to chat in the break. No one ever says yes, so that's fantastic. Thank you. So quite geeky from an early age. Here's a few photos that kind of tell you a bit about my life. So I come from like an average family. My mum and dad were nurses, brother and sister who were 5 years younger than me. And my life was just kind of like bobbing along until, unfortunately, when I was 12, all of a sudden, my mum had a headache on the Saturday, and unfortunately, a couple of days later, died from a brain hemorrhage. So kind of threw our family into absolute turmoil. So a very difficult time for all of us. My dad remarried about a year later, so possibly too quickly and possibly to the wrong person, just a personal opinion. And our lives went from living in a functional family to living in a dysfunctional family. So for 3 years, between the ages of like 13 to 16, I really didn't have a great time, not enough food to eat, some sort of emotional cruelty, a bit of physical cruelty, all sorts of difficulties really at home. And for example, we had baked beans on toast every day for 3 years, apart from Sunday when we got a roast dinner. For about 15 years after I left home, I just couldn't eat baked beans at all. But I'm back on it now, so that's good. So I was always hungry, not having a great time at home. I used to work as a waitress in a cafe, and one Saturday walking to work, I told my friend, when I was 16, I told my friend that I just kind of I must have had a terrible time the night before or that day, and said to my friend Kate, I need to leave home. I'm going to go crazy if I don't leave home. And she told me that her mum took in lodgers, and maybe she could ask her mum if we could move in with them. So she did, and the next Saturday I took my stuff round in carrier bags round to her house, and then spent a great year living with Kate and her family. I tried to stay on at school because I wanted to take my A-levels, but unfortunately that was quite difficult because my school was 25 miles away. I went to the grammar school, and I was working in the cafe for 4 evenings a week and at the weekends to try and make ends meet, and I needed to pay Kate's mum money to stay there because they didn't have lots of money. So I was trying to balance everything, but it didn't work really. I was falling asleep in the sixth form common room, and I realised after a few months that I was going to have to leave school and get a job, so I did. So I started working for the local council, which I absolutely hated, not because it was the council, but because it was filing, and I was just so bored, basically, filing and making cups of tea. I moved from there we were living in Essex in the UK, moved to London, spent a year working with refugees, which I loved, spent a year trying to be a student nurse, which I hated. I was like the worst student nurse ever. I was really, really shy and very scared of the patients, and so that didn't go down very well. And I'm one of those nurses, I don't know if you've seen Carry On films, you probably have, but I was like one of those just useless nurses on Carry On films who starts running a bath and then completely forgets about it until they see the water gushing down the middle of the ward. So I was a terrible nurse. Then I worked in a record company for a couple of years, which I absolutely loved, in the accounts department, so doing some maths, which was great, and did that for a couple of years. Then when I was 20, my boyfriend proposed, we got married, had my first daughter, and I thought, well, I'll have another child and then I'll go back to work after that. And the other child turned out to be twin boys, so you can see us here. This is me when I was, I think, 23 or 24, with 3 children under 2.5. So, of course, that was challenging, but it was also fun. I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, not that long after that photo was taken, my marriage broke down. We had to run away one morning to a women's refuge. So ended up living in a women's refuge for 6 months, then came out of there, got a new place to live, and then thought, OK, what am I going to do now? I wasn't expecting to be a single parent with 3 children. I need to get a job. But when I looked at the job market and thought about my qualifications, which weren't many, I hadn't been in work for a few years because I'd been bringing up the kids, I realised that I'd be working in a supermarket, probably on the checkout, and I wouldn't be able to earn enough money to even pay for childcare for the kids. So that wasn't an option. So then I thought, OK, well, why don't I try and go back into education? I didn't want to leave in the first place. It was just my circumstances. So I went along to the local college, managed to do like a maths access course, and that got me onto a degree course the next year. And so I did a 4-year degree in computing. So you can see the photo of me at graduation with my brother and sister and my dad and 3 children, getting a bit bigger now. So that was really hard to start with, but amazing. Had such a great time. I used to get called Auntie Sue because I was like really old. I was about 27. But nearly everyone else in my class was like an 18-year-old guy. But I had an amazing time on my degree. In the final year of my degree, my project supervisor said to me, what do you think about doing a PhD? So I said, oh, I'd love to do a PhD. I didn't tell him. I had no idea what a PhD was. I was just trying not to look stupid. So I went actually to the library after that and looked up what is a PhD. And when I saw that it was doing research, that I'd get paid, which was good. I'd really enjoyed doing the research on my final year project. I thought, OK, yes. So I applied for the position and got it. So then started a PhD. In the middle of my PhD, I applied for a lectureship, so I became a full-time lecturer. So then finally I actually had a proper salary to help me bring up my family. So then, since then, that's, 20-something years ago now, I've had an amazing career. I've done all different sorts of things, including, like we said just now, getting an OBE, which just I couldn't believe that happened. I still can't believe it now, but I've got the proof. The royal family actually tweeted a photo of me with Prince Charles, and it's really funny. Every time I see that photo, it looks like we're kind of fist bumping, like we're down with the kids. But actually, we're shaking hands. And I think actually we were told in the sort of prep bit before, don't shake hands with Prince Charles. Oh, sorry, King Charles now. Don't shake hands with him. But I somehow remembered that as shake hands with him. I got that bit wrong. So anyway, I didn't get told off afterwards. And that was an amazing day. And what I love about that photo is it looks like Buckingham Palace changed the colour of their carpet and furniture to match my hair. So how cool is that? So I've gone from being very shy, you can probably tell now I'm not so shy. It's taken a lot of time working on myself and kind of practicing things like public speaking. And I've gone from being scared to talk to one person to the middle photo here is me getting the Grace Hopper Impact Award, a social impact award back in 2017. And at that talk, I had an audience of 17,000 people at a big conference centre in Orlando, Florida. And I have to say, I was a little bit nervous for that one. And I kind of went through my talk and it all went well. And it is an amazing feeling when 17,000 people laugh at something that you've said, intentionally funny, obviously. It's just such an amazing feeling. And I suddenly understood why stand-up comics do that, because it is just incredible to have so many people kind of joining in with you and laughing at stuff. So that was great. And it was funny, when I finished that talk, I went down to the back of the stage, and coming up towards me was forgotten her name, Melinda Gates, was Melinda Gates, and she looked petrified. So I thought to myself, okay, so it's quite normal to be scared to going to talk in front of 17,000 people. But I did it, so I was very proud of myself for doing that. Some of the other things that I've done outside of my kind of academic career is I set up a social enterprise called Tech Mums, teaching tech skills to mums in disadvantaged areas. So kind of like I was when I was younger, because I've really seen that technology and education have just dramatically changed my life from where we were living in poverty through to now I'm not a multimillionaire. But I'm not poor, which is amazing. I'm comfortably off, I guess it's called these days. So it's just changed my life, and I've seen that for myself and my family. I've now got 4 children and a lovely second husband. It's just changed my life out of all recognition of where it was, really. But not only has it changed my life, but it's changed my children's lives. So, the 3 children that are in that early pick there are now in their late 30s and 40. I'm not old. How can I be old enough for that? But I am. And they've got great lives. And also I've now got 6 grandchildren as well. So, it kind of ripples down the ages. And I really value the fact that I've got that education, that it's been in technology, because it has just dramatically changed my life, and I kind of want that to happen for more and more people, really. Which is why I'm a professor of computer science at Durham University now, and part of my job title is technology evangelist, because that's what I just love doing, is going around and saying how amazing technology is. So during my PhD, I set up the UK's first online network for women in technology called BCS Women. So it's the British Computer Society Women's Network. And that was because I hardly ever met any other women in computing. And when I went to a Women in Science conference, there were loads of women there, and we had an amazing time. And I just thought, why don't I just try and connect together all the women that want to connect together in computing in the UK? So I did that in 2001. And that's been amazing. It's still running now. And that led me up to Bletchley Park in the first place. Was anyone here been to Bletchley Park? Yes, good. That's good. Lovely. So as you can see from the slide, it's where the code breakers worked during the Second World War. And such an important place. The first time I went there, I had absolutely no clue about that. I just knew the code breakers worked there, and in my mind it was kind of 50 old blokes in tweed jackets. I don't know where that image came from, so that's kind of what I thought it was. The first time I went in 2003, I went to the meeting I was supposed to go to, representing BCS Women, and then went for a walk around and bumped into these guys who were rebuilding Turing's bomb machine, so one of the machines that was used to industrialise the code breaking process. And I just found that absolutely fascinating. And chatting to them, they told me that actually I thought it was 50 old blokes that worked at Bletchley Park. Nothing wrong with old blokes. I'm married to one. But actually it was about 8,000 women and 2,000 men. So about 10,000 people worked there all through the war. And the work that they did there was said to have shortened World War II by 2 years, which I found utterly incredible. I found out after that time that Bletchley Park might have to close as well, and so I started a campaign to save it. So it's back in 2008. So by that time, I'd been a PhD student, a lecturer, senior lecturer, principal lecturer, and at this time I was head of department. And so I emailed all the heads and professors of computing in the country and said, we've got to save Bletchley Park. It's such an amazing place. And lots of professors got on board pretty quickly. We wrote a letter to the Times. I got on BBC News, and that was amazing in the summer of 2008. But then actually nothing much happened after that. So we got lots of publicity, but no money coming into Bletchley Park to help save it. And it wasn't until a few months later, so early 2009, I'd started using Twitter, now called X, boo, hiss, which I used to love, but don't anymore. But it was amazing at that time, early days of Twitter. And I saw this tweet from Stephen Fry saying he was stuck in a lift in Centre Point, and so he tweeted a selfie, and could anyone help him get out? So I saw that, and I thought, Stephen Fry, he must be interested in Bletchley Park. So I looked at his profile. Luckily, he was following me on Twitter, which meant I could send him direct messages. So I sent him, I think, 3 direct messages saying, if you get involved with the Bletchley Park campaign, you'll really be able to help, because you're a sort of national treasure. And just thought, well, maybe he'll help, maybe he won't. And amazingly, the next day, he tweeted a link to my blog, which was kind of documenting the campaign, asking everyone to read my blog and support the campaign, which was just utterly amazing. And that day, I'd been getting about 50 hits a day on my blog, which I thought was great. But that day, just one tweet from Stephen Fry, and I got 8,000 hits on my blog and became the most retweeted person in the world on Twitter, just from doing that. And it really helped me to realise that if you get key influential people involved in what you're doing, you can really make a big difference really quickly. And also, again, kind of the power of technology if you use it sort of to its best potential. So the campaign was 3 years. I thought it would take about 3 to 6 months. After 3 years, I thought it was never going to end. But then in 2011, the director of Bletchley Park said Bletchley Park was saved and that they'd got 4.1 million from the Heritage Lottery Fund and some match funding, and so they knew that they were going to be okay. So, woohoo! I'm going there next week, giving a talk there next week. Again, I haven't been there for about 5 years now, so that'll be interesting. So as part of the Bletchley Park campaign, I got involved in trying to raise funds for Bletchley Park to buy the Turing papers. So some of the papers that Alan Turing wrote were up for auction at Christie's. I went along to the auction, which was amazing. I'd not been to an auction before, but that was just incredible in itself. And the papers were up for £300,000 to £500,000, I think was the guide price. And I helped Bletchley Park get 100,000 from Google. They had some other funding as well. So they had about, I think about £120,000 that they could bid. And when they came to to this lot, the Turing papers, the auctioneer said, and the bidding starts at, what did he say? I've forgotten now, £150,000, I think. So basically more than Bletchley Park had, so they couldn't even bid for the papers. But it was really interesting because there were a few bids and then it didn't actually meet the, is it the reserve price? I can't remember. Yeah, the reserve price. And so it all went quiet. And basically what happened was about 3 months later, I don't know, something happened behind the scenes and then the papers appeared at Bletchley Park. So that was amazing. But so I got to know about Alan Turing, I guess, from going to Bletchley Park and finding out about not going to say it. So I almost ruined what I was going to say for this slide. So I've been using ChatGPT and DALL-E to create some images because we're talking about AI and I love AI and technology. So does anyone know what this picture represents? The Turing test, thank you. So I nearly said it on the last slide. The Turing test. So Alan Turing is kind of like the father of computer science, the father of AI, and worked at Bletchley Park. And so one of the ideas that he came up with was the Turing test, which actually wasn't called the Turing test until I think after he died. It was called the Imitation Game, which, has anyone seen the film The Imitation Game? Great. Okay. So you know that less than 50% of that is true. The content of it's a great film, but does anyone remember how many women were in the Imitation Game, the film? One. How many women worked at Bletchley Park? Does anyone remember from what I just said? 8,000, right? So I watched the film thinking, amazing, there's now a Hollywood film about Bletchley Park, and most of it's not true, but never mind, it's still a good film. And Alan Turing, so Alan Turing in the film actually builds what's called Christopher in the film, which is the bomb machine that I was referring to earlier. But actually, he didn't build it at all. He came up with a theoretical model as one of the other code breakers, and a guy called Doc Keane and his team actually were the engineers that built the bomb machine. But apart from that, it's a good story. No, it's a great film. So Alan Turing came up with the phrase, the imitation game, and the idea was, can machines think? So if we have one person in one room and a person and a machine in another room, and you're interacting by typing with that person's interacting by typing with a person and with a machine, can they tell which one is the person and which one is the machine? So that was the Turing test back then, and that's kind of like sort of seen as a test for, does AI work? Can we replace people with AI? So when I started my degree, so again that's back in 1989, this was kind of like cutting edge AI. And so there was this thing called ELIZA, which we were told about in our classes. So you could type in Well, you'd get a prompt from Eliza, so you can see from this chat that I did the other day. So Eliza was supposed to be a therapist, and the whole idea was that if people needed therapy, we don't have enough therapists. If we've got an AI therapist, then that can take some of the load away from therapists, and people can just chat online to an AI therapist, and that will help them with their problems or whatever. So you can see from this that it doesn't take long to realise that actually it's not very useful, because I'd like to discuss my relationships. I'm not sure I understand you fully, says Eliza. So, already straight away, really, you can see that Eliza's not going to be able to help me with my problems with my relationships, which, of course, I don't have any. Well, I'm not going to talk about them here anyway. So that was kind of the AI interactions at that time. So it's back in the 1980s. And another thing we learned about was expert systems. So these were kind of the things that we were taught during our degree. And so expert systems were, the example we were always given, we could replace a doctor. So instead of going to see a doctor, you could kind of like type in your symptoms to the AI system, and it could diagnose what was wrong with you. And so there were several systems around at that time which were doing that, and that was kind of cutting edge as well. And I think, probably on the NHS website now, they've got things like this which you can use. So I think we now know that these are useful, but they can't actually take the place of doctors. We still need humans kind of in the loop. So we also learnt about neural networks, and kind of trying to replicate the way the brain works with neurons is the idea of neural networks. So you've got some inputs coming in, some kind of stuff happens in the middle where the blue nodes are, and then you get some outputs coming out the other end. And at that time, again in sort of 80s and 90s, there were simple neural nets, but there wasn't anything like some massive practical use of neural nets at that time either. And so at the end of my degree, for my final year project, I wrote a natural language interface to a database, which is basically a family tree database. So you put in some data about your family tree, and then you can ask it questions in natural language, which just means like in English. So you can say, if it was my family, who is Sue's daughter? And then it would tell you the answer. So I wrote that, and that was really hard to do. It took me like 9 months, and it wasn't that great in the end. But that was kind of like, not that my work was cutting edge, but that's kind of where we were with the technology at the time. You could create these AI things, but they weren't that good, and you couldn't really use them on a large scale, basically. And so having a look at the World Wide Web at that time, so I think this is from it says 1992, lots of stuff online was just basic from what we've got so used to today. And I just put this up as an example for anyone that was alive then, or anyone that wasn't alive then and wants to see how basic the World Wide Web was. Kind of everything was kind of basic in that way at that time. So does anyone know what this generated image is supposed to represent? Yes, congratulations. Yeah, great. Yeah, so the AI winter. So then kind of around that time has been called the AI winter because there was loads of theory, people coming up with lots of different theories, AI theories, but we didn't really have any practical examples of it being able to do something really useful. So that's kind of like I think late 80s, 90s, early 2000s, which is around the time that I was doing my PhD. And you see my hair changes colour through some of the photos. But this is me getting my PhD in 2001. And just an example of how things have changed. So in 2001, I got a PhD, which means it is kind of original, useful work at that time, for simplifying an algorithm to compute ripple effect. So if you think of a big software system, the whole idea is that if you make a change to, say it's 20 million lines of code and it's a big banking system, which actually now I've said that is not big now, but it was then, you make a change to the software in one part of the system. I simplified an algorithm to calculate how much change that would have to another part of the system over here. And there was an algorithm that someone else had come up with, but we couldn't use it because we didn't have the compute power to be able to calculate that. And if we tried, it would take like 1,000 years or something to just get one measure coming back. So we just didn't have the computing power to be able to do that at that time. And in fact, my PhD is basically obsolete now because we don't need that, because we do have so much more compute power now. So we can use the original algorithm. So just around that time also, I got very interested in software failures because, as I said, I absolutely love technology, and it's really changed my life. I just see it doing amazing things. But then at the same time, it's not always great. So we do have to kind of keep in mind that things don't always go well with technology. And so this is just a few examples here. So one that's been in the press a lot recently with the post office example. But there's also, like the software on the Boeing Air Max, NHS systems, and the one that actually first caught my eye was the London ambulance system back in the 90s, where I think about 10 people died because of the way that the software wasn't fit for purpose and wasn't implemented properly. And I think I just put this in here really to highlight that technology is amazing, can do amazing things, but sometimes it doesn't. And a lot of the time it's because the thought hasn't gone into it beforehand. And I have to say, I really loved what everyone was saying on the panel just before now, because I thought everything that was said there was exactly right. You need to make sure that you identify what your problems are first. Don't just get some system and try and implement it because it's AI or because it's new technology. Think about what your problems are, what are the problems you're trying to solve, and then find out, well, what are the solutions that are out there to help me solve my problem, to do it that way round. So around this time, I also found out about Moore's Law. And I don't know if you've heard of Moore's Law, but it's a guy called Moore, who I think in the, I haven't put it on there, 60s or 70s, it starts from 1970 there, said that the number of transistors on microchips would be doubling about every 18 months to 2 years. So basically, the compute power that you have every 18 months to 2 years is going to double and double and double and double. So that's kind of gone on through time. And like when I was doing my PhD, we weren't at a place where we had the compute power to do anything much at all. And so then this is kind of a critical paper which came out in, I think, 2017, written by some people working at Google who, like I talked about neural nets before, we had neural nets, but they came up with a new architecture for neural nets, which included transformers, so like a transformer architecture. So I'm not going to go into detail of what that is, but it was a new way of kind of structuring the neural nets, which, when loads of computing power was thrown at it, managed to have amazing results. And so from the simple neural net that we had, like when I was doing my degree, we now had I guess the first iteration was called GPT-1, but I didn't see that. I kind of found out about these when GPT-2 was out, which I think is about 5 years ago, or 4 years ago, and just found it incredible that there was this thing that you could, kind of thinking back to ELIZA, which wasn't really fit for purpose from the 80s, there was now something that you could interact with, which could give you much more realistic, kind of human-like answers and information. So, and now GPT-1, GPT-2 were being trained on massive amounts of data with lots of computing power, which made such a massive, massive difference. And in general, what the difference was that I think we all know, like autocomplete on our phones or in documents that we've got now. What the neural net, the large language model, is doing is basically doing that, but on a massive, massive, massive scale. It's kind of guessing what is the next word going to be over and over and over, and then is able to come up with amazing results. So has anyone seen this? This kind of went viral on the internet, I think, a couple of years ago, as an example, I think, of training AI to be able to recognise which is a chihuahua and which is a blueberry muffin. And I think before I saw this, I'd never noticed that chihuahuas and blueberry muffins look similar. But yeah, it just went kind of completely crazy online. And my daughter, my youngest daughter's 20 now, so she, of course, is on TikTok 12 hours a day. So she showed it to me because it came up on her TikTok. She's like, "Oh, look, AI. Look, Mum." So I just thought this was really funny because it really shows you how sometimes things that you don't even realise look similar really do look similar. And so in 2020, here we are, we have ChatGPT, which So thinking about how large language models work, they loads of data is fed in, just absolutely loads of data. So if we look at the table, we've got at the top, we've got common crawl, which is basically kind of what's on the internet. We've got books, we've got the whole of Wikipedia, and web text too, which is on there, which is actually Reddit. So I don't know if anyone knows Reddit, but it's kind of I guess a bit techie chat site, mainly based in sort of North America. And so the people that were putting GPTs together, ChatGPT, used this as the basis, their base data for the neural net with the transformer architecture, which we now call a large language model. So all of this was the base data for everything that it was going to do. And so you can probably see from what's here that there can be some bias inherent in what they're using, because if you think of all the data that's online, of course some of it is biased, but also the fact that they used Reddit, which is 22% of the whole of the original versions of ChatGPT, is a bit worrying, because there's just lots of stuff on Reddit which you probably wouldn't want to read. So there are some issues with the data that was used in the first place. And around this time also, my PhD student, Sarah Wire, started working with me at Durham, and we were looking at large language models. And one of the things we thought was, I wonder if we can find any bias in, I think it was GPT-2 then. So Sarah decided to do an experiment. So she, you can just type in prompts. Has everyone used ChatGPT? Yeah, okay, so you know what I'm talking about. So you type in prompts to get it to do something, or to kind of auto-complete something that you've written. So we decided to just type in, men can, women can, and then just look and see if the results were any different, like was there any bias? And what we found was, amazingly, back then, straight away, within seconds, there was definitely bias there, with kind of like sexist, misogynist stuff very quickly. And so Sarah's first experiment was she put in the prompt, men can, 10,000 times, women can, 10,000 times, took all of that data and then did topic clustering analysis. So to look at which topics came up for men can over 10,000 times and which came up for women can. And these are the frightening results. Whether actually for men, it's not frightening. So if we look so topic 0 is the biggest topic that came up. So that's kind of like God and Jesus. Second topic is my favourite, superheroes. So that's cool. Third topic, urination, not so great. Fourth topic, alcohol. I'm also quite keen on that. And then we go on to sort of Viagra, reading and books, which is good, homosexuality, and then race. So, kind of interesting. I like the fact that superheroes come second. I wish it was the same for women. And then when we look at women, though, it's very different, right? So the biggest topic that comes up is rape and violence, then abortion, marriage, arguing, the military, sports, clothing, and then Islam. So just so different from the topics that came up with just typing in men can. So there's just no bias in what we're typing in at all. So I just wanted to show you that, to kind of highlight that the data that you have to start with, that you put in at the beginning, can massively affect what happens in terms of your output. And so that was actually, I just tried it again this morning to see what would happen. So I typed in men can into ChatGPT, and it was all lovely things. Men can do the cooking. Men can look after children. Men can have mental health problems. Oh, sorry, that's not lovely, but it's but it's not anything. But they're all kind of like nice, real world, I suppose, and not awful things. So if anyone's interested in kind of bias in AI, this is an amazing film which is on Netflix called Coded Bias, and it starts with an amazing woman called Joy Bullwhinnie, who was a researcher at MIT in computing, and she was working with some software which was facial recognition software. So she's a black woman, and she was just sitting in front of the screen, trying to get it to recognise her face. And it didn't work. And she couldn't work out why the software wasn't working. And after time, she got someone else who was white, probably not even thinking about the fact that, first of all, that they were white, to come and sit in front of the facial recognition software, and it recognised their face straight away as a face. And so then she sat there and got a white mask and put that on her face, and it recognised her. So obviously the facial recognition software had not been written to recognise black faces or people with dark skins. So there's all sorts of things which, you just might not think about. And if you're interested in anything around that topic, I highly recommend this film. It's so good. So a couple of years ago, I was at a conference called South by Southwest in Austin in Texas, and this is my friend Worley on stage, who's like a tech serial entrepreneur, an amazing guy. And he was giving I think half-hour talk at South by Southwest, and he told me what he was doing beforehand in terms of what he was going to do, which he said, and I think probably was, the first instance of a talk given completely by ChatGPT, and all the images created by DALL-E or ChatGPT as well. And so he read the talk from his iPad, as you can see, and no one realised throughout the whole talk. So he'd fed in lots of his previous talks and stuff, so that the software knew his kind of could work out his voice in terms of sort of the tone of the way he said things and his content and stuff like that. But it wrote the whole speech for him, and he just read it, walked around reading it out, and no one realised that that's what it was. But ChatGPT had written the whole speech, and he'd read it out and had created all of the images as well. And so he kind of announced that at the end, and everyone was like, "Wow!" And so the press were there, and it was kind of noted as the first ever fully AI presentation, AI created presentation last year, and I just thought that was an amazing thing to do. And so I don't know if you've ever Googled yourself. I do it quite often. Well, not so much anymore, actually. It's quite funny because I'm Professor Sue Black, and there's another Professor Sue Black who is a forensic anthropologist. And I don't know, probably about 10 or 15 years ago, I was more famous, but now she's more famous. And it's because she's written a couple of books, and she did the Royal Institution Christmas lectures a couple of years ago, and she's my friend, and she is amazing. We met because we got the same name, because we kept getting mistaken for each other ages ago. And so now and again I Google myself, and I don't bother anymore because she always comes top now, because she's and she's also in the House of Lords now, which I'm not. So she's got a lot more famous than me. But also a while ago, I can't remember how long ago, I just put in this same prompt, create a short paragraph which could serve as an introduction to Professor Sue Black OBE. And this is exactly the first thing that it came up with, which is completely accurate. I'm amazing, I'm inspiring. No, I mean, just in terms of what I've done and who I am, it wasn't mixing me up with the other Sue Black. So I just thought, who is DBE? I'm OBE, she's DBE. Always one step ahead of me. No, she's wonderful. So it just kind of served me to show that the AI is getting better and better over time. You can really see that happening. And there are just now so many apps that are built on top of large language models, just absolutely amazing things. And these are just a few. And they're getting better and better as well. Like Google Translate is incredible now. Has anyone used Otter AI? I think that's my favourite. That's just incredible. You can just have it on your phone. You record, if you're having a work meeting, and everyone agrees, obviously, you record your work meeting, and then it summarises it for you at the end. It gives you a whole transcript. It's just incredible. And it's just at some point we won't have to think anymore at all. We can just copy and paste everything. All of these apps are just getting better and better and better. In fact, has anyone got a favourite one that they would like to share with everyone else, which is changing their life? No? Pi, okay. I don't know. Oh, okay, right, thank you. Was it PI or P? Okay. Great. Sorry, is it PI or PY? PI, just pi. Okay, pi. Thank you very much. That's a great one. Anyone else? Don't all shout at once. Okay, right. Well, so there's all of these and loads more, and pi as well, which I'm going to look up when we finish. So just to kind of round up now towards the end of my talk, I thought, well, I'll put in some prompts to ChatGPT, and this is the paid version where you get the pictures as well, and see what great images I can create. So I just typed in, create an image of a woman excited by, but also apprehensive of AI. And this is what I got. And then I thought, okay, but then maybe we should have a man in there as well. So recreate it with a man and a woman. So that's what we got. And then place these people on the Isle of Man at the Innovation Challenge. And so that's what we got there, which is my final picture. It's just such a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, everyone. And if you have any questions, I'd absolutely love to talk to you. Thank you.
Professor Sue Black, thank you so much. That was really, really insightful. And I think it's fair to say that many of us do find the idea of AI particularly quite daunting. Do you ever see a point where it will take over and we will really never have to think again?
Next week.
Does anyone have any questions? Got any questions from the floor?
Stunned everyone into silence.
We need some AI questions.
There's a question.
Oh.
Whether quantum computing will transform it further.
About quantum computing. When will quantum computing transform it further? Yeah, that's a really good question. We talked about that on my podcast, which I didn't actually mention. 100 Moments That Rocked Computer Science. I did an episode with Tommy Lube, who's a quantum expert. I think probably what he said was like 10 to 20 years, probably. So I think we're at the early days of quantum computing still. But I think it will be transformative. But it's not the same kind of computing as traditional computing, so it won't be useful for exactly the same things, I don't think. And actually Worley, that I talked about giving his presentation in Austin, he's an expert in quantum computing as well, if anyone's interested. But yeah, I'm not a quantum computing expert, but I think it's kind of 10 years off probably from what I've heard from experts.
And just finally, would you have a message to the finalists here today?
Good luck. You probably all got absolutely amazing products that you've been working on, and I absolutely can't wait to hear and watch your pitches. So I'm very excited for that now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Professor Sue Black OBE. Thank you.